Bill, let me just close. What's your final thoughts? I mean, you understand banking, you understand finance, you're really sharp in all of these things. From your perspective, we're getting bombarded. 190 banks are supposedly about ready to collapse. We just had the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, say, "Oh, the banking sector's fine. Inflation, yeah, it's high. It's only 4.2, but we'll get it down." Of course, we take food and energy out of that mix of evaluation. I mean, how do you take that out of the evaluation? And then they bump, the interest rate again. Help us understand how significant it is when the Fed bumps the interest rate 10 times in a row. What does that mean in a practical way? Is this just like buying houses, or how does this impact everybody in the room?
Well, the Fed has a very interesting history anyway, Federal Reserve, and unfortunately, who benefits? I mean, you got 70% of trading on Wall Street right now is algorithms. It's the hedge funds are making a killing right now with these fluctuations. And how about 401ks and IRAs and all those that are just being? I mean, it's like they're playing a game with them. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. They overdid it. Senator Tim Scott made a comment that was very interesting. Is he said if we'd just had one more senator and had the majority in the Senate, we could have stopped $4 trillion worth of additional federal debt. And just think of that election in 2020 when we lost the Senate. Oh my gosh, that was a mess. I could speak for an hour of how that happened, but just you think about that. And these irresponsible people. I mean, Michele mentioned, being there in Congress and all these spending plans. I mean, it's, most of these people, I'm sorry, but a lot of these people couldn't balance a checkbook that are writing our rules, that are writing our laws. Where did they come from? How did they get elected? And they're making these trillion-dollar decisions? So we've got excess debt. We've got a Federal Reserve that profits and benefits a small amount of big banks and big hedge funds. And, it's one of those things. You just stay conservative, go with the flow. I mean, this is final day stuff. I mean, and the big concern right now is stagflation. Inflation, but the wages aren't increasing. That's a big problem. But I'm trying to put this into perspective because it's a very complicated problem. A very complicated problem that benefits a small amount of people. And once again, we have a lot of people, the lack of competence, making our laws and creating this massive federal debt. And
that right there is really important, because one of the judgments of God upon nations is that he gives them leaders who act like children.
Bingo.
You can read it in the book of Isaiah. Okay, so this is our last question. And I want three of you to respond to this. Has God removed his hand of protection from the United States?
Well, he's certainly in the process if we don't turn around spiritually. I'm very, very concerned. And again, I think the question is, how much is he going to let the church see of this end time scenario? We've already seen some things I think we didn't think we would see. And maybe he's leaving us here just a little bit longer to be salt and light and to delay some of this decay. So I think the question is, how long is he going to allow the church to remain here? And after a discussion like this for the last, hour or so, aren't you glad you have a blessed hope?
Amen.
More so than ever?
Amen.
To know the church is going to be removed from the wrath of God. What we're seeing now is nothing compared to what's coming. I'm going to be pre-recording Amir Sarfati next week on tribulation-type issues. And what God is sparing us from is staggering. For us, staggering in a good way. But for those left behind, staggering in a heartbreaking way.
Go ahead, Michelle.
There's final judgment, but then there's also blessings and judgments that nations get. And I think Bill and I had the opportunity to observe, and I would say from my opinion and perspective, I felt like I witnessed God lifting his hand of blessing and protection over the United States on January 28th, 2020. And we've been under judgment, in my opinion, since then. So I think we're in a period of judgment. And the one thing I see coming out of the White House are we have some of the most anti-Israel policies that we have ever had coming out of our State Department. Even our State Department is financing the civil unrest in Israel right now. So we are receiving a cursing from that, so we're under that judgment. It's not the final judgment, but there's a judgment that we're going through, and we do experience blessing or cursing depending on how we're obedient to the things of God as a nation.
Absolutely, Michelle. That's, that's kind of what I was talking about tonight. I mean, when you look at the cost of 9/11 and the cost of coronavirus and these are, events that have accelerated final day events. COVID has probably the only positive thing about COVID, it gave us an idea of what the World Economic Forum and all the globalists are doing and what they're trying to put in place. One thing that I'm really concerned about is how long is God going to allow the attack on our young people? It's getting really bad. Well, I won't even go into details because YouTube might pull it. But you know what's happening in the schools. How long before God says enough is enough? And I think it's Matthew 18:7. It's crossed the line. Yeah. It's absurd. Yeah. Yeah. It's diabolic, and it's unbelievable. So that's what I'm really watching outside of Israel for sure. That's always a key component. Jerusalem is God's time clock to final day events. But what is happening with our young people in America in all forms and fashions, and what the globalists are attempting to do with these young people.
And that's
consequences.
That's the reason I feel like we gotta, at this time, be really straightforward over this subject. Because Jesus
absolutely.
said, if you put a stumbling block in front of one of these little ones, it's better than a millstone hung around your neck. You can only shake your fist at God for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give our panel a hand, would you?